For the first time since 2 days ago, the Giants own the NL West. That, of course, is a joke about MLB putting out a tweet when the Dodgers finally took over first place by a half a game for the first time since, what was it, May? They put out this celebratory tweet with fireworks and all that. But the Giants took it back this weekend. So we're going to talk all about the Giants beating the Dodgers in this last meeting between the two of the year on today's Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants Baseball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show, we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. And coming up on today's show, as I said, we're going to talk about the Giants taking back the NL West. It was pretty funny to me, the reaction more so than even the tweet itself. But what I mentioned in the opening there, that the MLB Twitter account had this big tweet with fireworks and the faces of Mookie Betts and Max Scherzer and somebody else. And the tweet said, the Dodgers own the NL West, like as if it was, just a matter of time before they took it over and that they weren't going to look back. But the next day, the Giants tied the division. It was a half-game lead for the Dodgers. And then they entered this series tied for first place. And so this series was going to have a lot to say. It was going to have everything to say about who was going to leave this series in first place, because it was a 3-game series. Someone was going to be in first place. And it turns out it was the Giants. They win the first game. Crazy extra inning game that we'll talk all about today. And then they lose the second game, which puts them back into a tie. And then in the finale on Sunday Night Baseball, Giants rough up Walker Buehler and win that game as well. So they leave this series with the best record in baseball. They're 87-50, which had me thinking yesterday about how my bold prediction for this team going into the year, bold prediction, mind you, was that they would go 86-76. And that was like, I almost felt a little nervous putting it out there that they would be 10 games over 500. They've already beaten that, and they have 25 games remaining. So they could literally go 0-25 the rest of the season and would still beat my bold prediction for this team. So that's the kind of year that they're having. You all know that. So they're a game ahead of the Dodgers in first place with 25 games left. Each team has 25 games left. But in the overall playoff picture, the Giants they're inching closer towards a playoff berth, clinching a playoff berth. Their magic number to clinch a postseason berth is down to 11, meaning any combination of Giants wins plus losses by whatever team is just on the outside looking in of the wild card race, currently the Cincinnati Reds by a half game, but that can change to other teams. If those numbers add up to 11, the Giants are in the playoffs. So we'll continue to talk about that as the rest of the season plays out. Of course, the Giants today are in Colorado to start their second to last road trip of the year. 3 games at Coors, day off, and then 3 games in Chicago. So we'll preview that series as well. But let's just talk a little bit about these games. As I said, Friday was exhilarating. And excuse me, one of the big themes of today for me is that, trends that we thought existed or that people want to think exist don't necessarily exist. And one of those things was that Anthony DeSclafani just can't pitch against the Dodgers. The Dodgers have figured him out, and he's just going to lose against them every time. Because as you may recall, he got roughed up a couple times, like big time against the Dodgers. And at that point in the season, he had basically rolled against everybody else, but against the Dodgers, he had big problems. But in this first game of the series, September game, season on the line, pretty much a full strength Dodgers lineup, DeSclafani went out there and threw 6 shutout innings. So that just goes to show us, it should, that those kind of storylines aren't real, like in baseball. And, head-to-head matchups, like a pitcher against a team, it's nonsense, really. And pitchers have troubles at times, and the Dodgers are a really good team. And so it's not surprising that they got to him a couple times. I mean, they really got to him, but he if he's on, he can pitch against anybody. That's just kind of how the sport works. If you're on, you can get anybody out. And I mean, excuse me. We've said the same thing about Kevin Gausman at times, because for a couple of starts there, when he started to enter this little difficult spell he's been in, it was against the Dodgers, and people were saying they figured him out. He can't pitch against the Dodgers. Well, I don't believe that either. And hopefully, as today's a Kevin Gausman start in Colorado. We'll see how that goes. But, Kevin Gausman has time to figure it out before potentially the playoffs begin. But this game was crazy. DeSclafani went 6, and then Tony Watson, Tyler Rogers, Jake McGee, Dominic Leone, and Harleen Garcia went the rest of the way. McGee blew the save in the 9th. There was a crazy play where Buster Posey had a chance to tag out Justin Turner, which would have ended the game. 2 players were occupying third base. I believe it was Corey Seager and Justin Turner, and Posey tagged both of them. One of them was out. It turns out it was Seager, because Turner was the first. He started on third base, and Seager was on second. Anyway, then he tagged them both out. Seager was out. They both left the base, and then Buster Posey tagged the wrong player a second time. So they had a chance to end the game there. Next batter, Chris Taylor, ties it up. And then this game goes extra innings. Giants had so many chances in this game to win, to break it open, to do anything, and they couldn't get it done. But in the bottom of the 11th, a throwing error by Trea Turner, with Buster Posey booking it down the line, pulled the first baseman off the bag, and Buster Posey was called safe. It went to replay review, and replay confirmed that he was safe. And then, so that ended the game, put the Giants a game up in first place. And, despite all their struggles to score in that game, they came away with a win. So very relieving. It would have been a very difficult loss. And then on Sunday, that game also ended on a play that went to replay review. So these two teams, the Giants and Dodgers, just had a great season series. So coming up next, I want to kind of highlight that point, talk about how close this specific series was, and how close the season series was, with the Giants edging out the Dodgers in the season series. And we'll talk about why that's significant as well. So stay tuned for that. But first, does this sound familiar? You have one device that lets you catch the game, another that lets you stream your favorite shows, you're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called Directv Stream, and it brings you your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part is that there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with Directv Stream. You can learn more at directv.com. That's directv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Did you know that 85% of people who play daily fantasy sports lose? Is it really that surprising? The game is rigged against you. You're playing against thousands of other lineups, not to mention experts who have more tools and more time. Frankly, you don't stand a chance. Introducing Stat Hero is the first ever daily fantasy sports book that puts the player in control and winning within reach. Here's how it works. Stat Hero shows you their lineups and dares you to beat them. It's you versus the house in head-to-head fantasy matchups. You name your stakes, winner take all. You have the advantage. Stat Hero is showing you their lineups ahead of time. Nobody else does that. So I have played daily fantasy sports and I consider myself pretty good, in terms of baseball knowledge, but it really does feel like the game is rigged against you with so many different players in the game. It's kind of just random chance that somebody's going to have a better lineup. With Stat Hero, you are in total control. It's DFS the way it was meant to be, one-on-one. Play Stat Hero now and change the odds. Go to stathero.com/lockedon for your free to sign up for free. And right now you can get 3 times back on your first play. They're giving you a 300% match. That's unheard of. Go to stathero.com/lockedon, stathero.com/lockedon. All right, as promised, we're going to talk about the rest of these games between the Giants and Dodgers. Giants leaving town with a lead in the NL West with 25 games remaining. What more could you ask for? I mean, I guess we could ask for a bigger lead, but I mean, think about it. This Dodgers team has not lost this division since 2012, almost 10 years. I mean, it's been 8 consecutive seasons. This would be the 9th if they were able to win it. Giants are trying to be the team that last won it in 2012 and now takes it away from them in 2021. It's basically between the Giants and the Dodgers now. The Padres are 14 games behind the Giants. So they obviously are not statistically, mathematically eliminated from the division, but 14 games to make up and 25 games remaining is going to be extremely difficult. But, in this crazy game of baseball, crazier things have happened, and never say never is how I approach that. But the head-to-head season matchup between these two teams was just incredibly competitive. The Giants ended up going 10-9 against the Dodgers, so they win the season series, and that is significant because if these two teams tie for first place in the NL West, which is of course a very real possibility given that there's there's only one game separating them right now, then if they tie, then they would play a game 163 to determine the winner of the division. And that game, because the Giants won the season series, would be in San Francisco as opposed to in Los Angeles. So that is just a huge advantage and a very real possibility that they tie. And so then the Giants would host that game, huge deal. And then if they lost, they'd very likely still be in a position to host the wild card game. So they would potentially get 2 chances to win one game. And if they did, they would get into a best of 5 series. And, it's very possible that they could play LA in a game 163 and then still end up facing LA in the first round in the NLDS, no matter whether they lose or win that game 163, because the loser would play the wild card game. If the loser of 163 wins the wild card game, they would play most likely the winner of the NL West. But that is not a foregone conclusion. The Brewers are still in play to potentially grab that best record in baseball, or excuse me, in the National League, which is the only thing that matters here. And so the Brewers are 84-54, Giants are 87-50. So I can't do math on the fly here. They're just a couple games behind the Giants for that best record in the National League. And whoever has the best record in the National League will play the winner of the wild card game. And so I've kind of made the case that I think that actually wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, because let's say the Brewers end up with the best record in the league and the Giants find a way to win the division but don't have the best record in the league, then the Brewers would play the winner of the wild card game, and the Giants, if the season ended today but the Brewers had a better record, would play the Braves in the first round. And I personally think that's a more favorable matchup than potentially having to play the Dodgers in the first round. Although the Giants have played the Dodgers as tough as anybody this year and in years past. When I talked with Jeff Snyder from Locked On Dodgers before the season, we looked into the head-to-head kind of matchups and records between these two teams since the Dodgers' run of dominance started in 2013. And the Giants, they were like close to 500, the Giants and Dodgers, and the Dodgers were like 250 games over 500 against everybody else. So it's really kind of been crazy how well the Giants have played this Dodgers team, and it's just been super consistent. And this year and last year, I mean, I know the Giants ended up losing. They only played 10 games against the Dodgers last year because of the shortened season, and I know they lost that season series, but they played them tough. And this year they won the season series. So imagine that. Can't predict baseball. Nobody, outside of our region would have thought that was even possible. Nobody thought that the Giants could even be, at all involved in this division race, and they thought it was going to be Dodgers and Padres running away with the division, and the best chance the Giants had was third place, but that is not how it has played out, obviously. So anyway, let's talk for a second about the other two games over the weekend. Giants went with bullpen games, and this is a huge point that I want to bring up too. I see on Twitter just a lot of negativity about bullpen games and a lot of talking about how it's a huge disadvantage to have a game started by your relievers. And I just kind of don't see it that way. There is definitely the factor of tiring out your bullpen, and that can come into play and affect, the rest of your week, especially if you have back-to-back bullpen games as the Giants had here. But I put out what I meant to be a joke, and I think a lot of people took it that way. That on Sunday, the Dodgers' strategy of using a starting pitcher to start the game was really backfiring. And it was Walker Buehler who went 3 innings and gave up 6 earned runs, his worst start of the season. But my point of saying that was that it's not always that the strategy didn't work. Sometimes it's just that the players didn't perform at, up to the level that you would have hoped. And case in point with Walker Buehler, one of the best starting pitchers in the game, having a much worse outing than the Giants relievers. Through 3 innings, Giants relievers had given up 1 run, and Walker Buehler gave up 6. And so it's not like the night prior when the Giants lost, gave up 3 runs in the first inning, and an inning started by, Jay Jackson, and then Harleen Garcia came in. They gave up 3 runs, and people's reaction is generally, it was because you started with a reliever. But, starting pitchers give up runs in the first inning sometimes too, and the Dodgers are a really good offense. And so it's never surprising when they score some first inning runs or runs in any inning for that matter. So I think we need to think about it that way a little bit. And over the course of a long season, if the Giants started enough games with their relievers, I think you would generally see that the numbers would match up with the overall numbers that the relievers put up. There's not something inherently different about the first inning, although I do understand there is a psychological component, but I think the more you do it, the more they would get over that. And ultimately you just get the average production that you would expect out of your bullpen. And so anyway, it didn't work. And again, it's not that the strategy didn't work, but Giants got beat in a bullpen game on Saturday quite handily. But then on Sunday, the relievers were great. They used a lot of them, but they came through, and the Giants won the game 6-4 and left with the lead in the National League West. So coming up next, we're going to continue to talk about where the Giants are now. I want to talk a little bit about the upcoming games, and I want to talk about a lot of roster moves that got made, a ton of roster moves that got made. So we'll get into all of that next. But first, did you know that Built Bar has so many delicious flavors? There's something for everyone, and when you talk to a Built Bar fan, they're definitely passionate about their favorites. If you don't know the Built Bar flavors, you're missing out. Coconut, cherry, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, strawberry, orange, cookies and cream, German chocolate. Do you want to know what my favorite flavor is? Well, I'm going to go salted caramel. It's a really delicious combination, and it is amazing that Built Bars are able to taste basically like candy bars, but come in with a healthy profile. We're talking 18 grams of protein, only 4 to 5 grams of sugar. And that's really important to me. I wouldn't be eating a protein bar that really was a candy bar, but it's the best of both worlds when it can taste like one, but come in with a healthy profile. Go to builtbar.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at builtbar.com. It's that time of year again, and all eyes are now turning to football as teams are back on the gridiron to start the football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. Get all the updated odds, props, and contests, including online's biggest $500,000 NFL mega contest and the world's largest $200,000 NFL Survivor contest, open now at BetOnline. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 100% welcome bonus. Be sure to take advantage of their opening day super promo. Make a bet on the Thursday, September 9th season opener coming up between the Super Bowl champ Buccaneers and Dallas Cowboys. And if you lose, your wager will be refunded up to $25 for new customers only when signing up using promo code NFL100. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Promo code Locked On. All right, as promised, we are going to wrap this discussion up, talk about the remaining schedule. There's really not that much left for the Giants here, 25 games remaining. And I want to get into the roster moves and some of the players who were called up who made an immediate impact on the San Francisco Giants being able to win this critical series against the Dodgers. So a lot of moves were made. First of all, Evan Longoria, since the last time we spoke, was reinstated from the injured list, and they optioned Mauricio Dubon, who had just been called up, back to AAA. So Longoria in that first game was available off the bench, and they said Tommy La Stella was likely available as well. So La Stella did come back, and he made at least one start on Sunday in the series against the Dodgers. Dickerson in that Friday game, Alex Dickerson strained his hamstring late in the game. He had several chances to kind of come through with not even a hit necessarily, but just some kind of good, productive plate appearance, maybe a sac fly to win a game. And he couldn't do it on numerous occasions. And then he ends up hurting himself. So kind of a rough situation for Dickerson. And he ends up getting replaced on the roster. Not sure exactly what the one-for-one exchange was because they made a lot of moves, but we'll just say what those moves were. So Mauricio Dubon was brought back. I think that was the immediate corresponding move. And then prior to Sunday's game, Sammy Long was optioned to AAA. Camilo Doval was added to the bullpen. And Austin Slater was placed on the 7-day injured list with a concussion. Slater, in the first inning on Saturday, I believe it was, Saturday, he crashed into the wall on a Trea Turner home run. Slater was kind of trying to rob it. Looked like he didn't know quite where the fence was. So he crashed into the wall. They said he's feeling okay, but they want to just protect him. So he goes on the 7-day IL with a concussion. And the corresponding move there was that Steven Duggar was recalled from AAA, and he was in that starting lineup on Sunday, and he had a huge hit. He had a 2-run triple early in the game against Walker Buehler, and he was fired up. And he said after the game that he was preparing for the moment of being back in the major leagues the second he was optioned to AAA, which was about a month ago. So, I think Duggar provides quite a bit of value potentially on a team down the stretch here, especially with expanded rosters. So it's definitely not the last we're going to see of Steven Duggar, even if he's not hitting, which, was what was happening when he got sent back down. His numbers were kind of crashing, but he provides a lot of value on the bases. He's one of the team's fastest runners, if not number one. I mean, I don't think he actually is number one, but he's up there with Slater and Thairo Estrada. But also he's a great defensive center fielder, probably the best the Giants have. And so I think it's nice having him on the roster going into this series in Denver. We can pull up the Giants lineup for today in a moment. But, Steven Duggar, I think it's a nice add here in September, and we'll see how long he sticks around. But the Dickerson injury might mean trouble for him because he was kind of playing his way out of playing time as it was. And Darren Ruff swinging the bat really well, maybe making a case to not be in a platoon, but to just take those starts away. And we mentioned there was a mailbag question that asked, how do we get Darren Ruff more regular playing time? And I said it's hard to do with the roster as it was, but that if there was an injury, he would potentially take over an everyday role. And that could be what we see, or we could see more Steven Duggar. But the point is the Giants have choices, and that's always a good thing. They're not forced into a position where they're just having to run somebody out there that you just have very little faith in. Remember, that was such a major theme for most of the season, was that the replacements the Giants were able to bring onto the roster were able to do a good job, and Steven Duggar was a big part of that. So that's pretty much it regarding the roster moves. I have a note here that Kapler said Slater was with the team and in good spirits, but that he was banged up on that play colliding with the wall. So let me just talk for a minute about who I think is available tonight out of the bullpen, because there were a lot of comments about how bullpen games, it's a valid argument that the impact of 2 bullpen games in a row is potentially down the road when your bullpen is gassed and you don't have guys you can go to if your starting pitcher can't give you length. But I just think, as I look through the fact that the Giants have a 12-man bullpen, which is extremely large. Normally, if you're carrying like 5 starting pitchers, you're talking about a 7, maybe 8-man bullpen. Giants rocking with a 12-man bullpen right now. And I see plenty of guys who should be available today. And if they can get length out of Kevin Gausman, if they can get a big enough lead, they could potentially rest most of their key guys and have a lot of them ready to go tomorrow. So I don't think the impact is quite as big as people think, given the size of this pen. If they only had 7 relievers and they had to use them all in the last couple days, twice in a row, then you're in trouble. But I see plenty of guys who should be rested enough to be able to pitch tonight. And, depending on what Kevin Gausman does, then they could be in an even better position tomorrow. So as I said, 25 games left. This is a second to last road trip. Rockies, Cubs, homestand then against the Padres and Braves, back on the road for the final road trip of the year at San Diego, at Colorado, and then the final homestand of the year, D-backs and Padres. So this is the last road trip that includes a trip to a non-NL West division city. So the last kind of far trip going all the way to Chicago. So today, the Giants are taking on the Rockies. It is an early game on account of the holiday. The lineup, I'm trying to pull it up as we speak to see, I said I was going to check to see if Steven Duggar was in there. Steven Duggar not in the starting lineup. It is a lefty on the mound for the Rockies. So we've got Darren Ruff back in that leadoff spot, which I like to see. Chris Bryant is in there. The only lefties in there for the Giants are Brandon Crawford and Mike Yastrzemski. And as I said, Kevin Gausman on the mound. Rockies have been really good at home, so it's going to be a tough series for the Giants. But, the bats kind of broke out a little bit in the last few days, so hopefully they can just kind of explode in this series in Colorado. So that's all the time we have for today. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. You can follow me on Twitter at Ben Kaspick. That's Kaspick. These shows are now on YouTube. I keep meaning to mention that at the beginning of the show, but if you haven't checked it out yet, please go check it out. Check us out, subscribe, and watch when you can. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. We have had some connection issues on account of this being on YouTube, and we're recording in a different way. So if those continue to happen, we are aware and working our best to make sure that stops happening as soon as possible. Anyway, I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow talking about today's game. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.